Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Welcome to today's video. Today we are doing my July wrap-up. Actually this month I did quite a few books. I ended up with 12 books and then a DNF as well on top of that. All because I set a TBR, would you believe, and I almost stuck to it. By this much. I missed it by this much. So according to a Storygraph, which doesn't include DNFs, I read 12 books. Well done. And then, of course, I have one DNF, which isn't counted. Even though I got 50% through it, I think that deserves a tick in the red box. Surely. Anyway, so it was 3,684 pages. Which is a lot of pages, I suppose. My average rating was actually 4.48. So I had a good reading month in regards to ratings. But also, sometimes I'm a bit lost with ratings, so... Mostly fantasy, some romance, classics, children's, and manga. If you are new to the channel, I actually do spoiler and non-spoiler versions of my TBR. I like to rant sometimes and I use my videos to do that, but I don't want people who have never read the books to get spoiled. Currently, you're actually on the non-spoiler version of the video. But if you do not care about spoilers, I'll have the spoiler version in the cards and also down below if you want to click over to that one instead. So that's the stats for the video, and now we can actually get into my rundown and reviews. Let's go! Our first book for July was Dragon's Nest, which is the first section of Deltora Quest 3 and is technically its own book, but all four together make Deltora Quest 3. And this book is by Emily Rhoda, or Rudder. I change it around, I swip swap. So what is Dragon's Nest about? We find ourselves with Leif. I don't want there to be spoilers for the rest of the series, so this is going to be a little difficult to work around, but I'll get through it. But we're following Leif, who is the main character of the entire Deltora Quest series, and then his two helpers, side characters, Barda and Jasmine. Now in this book they're trying to defeat the Shadow Lord, trying to banish him, defeat him once and for all. And they discover that there is actually a curse over Deltora, which they didn't know about, but are now very much discovering. And this curse is like in the ground, people can't grow crops and they're all starving. And this curse was put on the land by, I believe it's 4 witches. And in order to defeat these 4 witches, they need to go travel and try and find the dragons of Deltora, who are the only ones powerful enough to defeat these witches and rid the land of this curse. Now, as always with Emily's work, I really love how she puts like little diagrams and pictures in. And some of the letters Leif exchanges with further afield associates, I suppose, are in code. And so when you're reading, they have the picture first, and so you can try and decode the letter first, and then they usually give reasoning or translation afterwards. Although once they didn't do that, and so I decoded it, and they never gave the translation in the actual text, so I just felt like I was smart, of course. It gives you a little break to do a little puzzle, and it's just fun to have little graphics all the way through. Now, Leif's character is actually really tested a lot. He's got a lot of pressure on his shoulders. And while there are other characters that are there to support him, there's still extra weight on him. Being the main character and all, Leif just has an extra portion, which is more like an entire, blockade of weight on him. I think he just likes traveling with his little party. I'm not gonna lie. And I love how Leif, despite going through all this horrible stuff in the previous books and even in the current book, he still has this ingrained kindness to him. It's not like he's become jaded against the world or anything, and I think that really helps his character along. Now, Bada and Jasmine, they play a part in this, but they are, I guess, slightly removed. I don't think they do as much as in, say, book 1 of the series. But they're still there, still supportive. But yeah, definitely Leif has the most burden on his shoulders in this first book. And of course, being the third book in the series, they do in fact bring in characters that you meet in the other books. And so you can sort of have these little Easter eggs of characters if you've managed to get through the other 2 books, which is kind of recommended. So in the end, I rated Dragon's Nest a 4.5. It was very good. Not quite 5 stars. I don't need to tell you it's almost 5. I always tend to say it's almost 5 stars. You don't need to know that. You can see that 4.5 is just slightly less than 5 because you're smart. So yes, 4.5 stars for Dragon's Nest by Emily Rhoda. Chronicles of Narnia. The Magician's Nephew. That is our next book by C.S. Lewis. Sometimes I say C.L. Lewis. Now, it's quite a classic book. A great many have read it, but there are also those who haven't read it. So it is the first chronological book of the series. Magician's Nephew is about Diggory, who lives in a house with his mother, aunt and uncle. The mother is ill, quite ill, and so she's not really up and about. And his uncle, his aunt's like, try and keep out of his way. Like, maybe just stay here with us instead of going and seeing your weird, creepy uncle, okay? And he's like, there. He seems really strange. And he's always upstairs in this attic room. And that's just a bit weird. Now, he meets their neighbour, Penny, I think. Penny Polly. Penny Polly Polly. Now, Polly is his next door neighbour, and they become friends. And there's actually this little crawl space up above the houses, like in the attic areas. And so they sort of make a little cubby in there and visit back and forth. One day they actually go across and they think they're in the next house over, which is empty. But instead they come out into the attic area of the uncle's area. And so they're like, well, this is a bit weird in here. And so in this room, the uncle has these rings and they end up going to a new land and chaos and adventure ensues. Now, I really did not enjoy, there's a witch character in it. Spooky, creepy vibes. It was so creepy. And you just got manipulation, dark person vibes. And I was like, oh, ugh. Like, I could see everything going downhill, and I was like, oh, I do not like this feeling. Which I think is the point, so it's okay. Now, Diggory isn't a good character, if that makes sense. He's not a perfect little human, and he makes a lot of dumb decisions. But he's also still goes to try and save Polly in the beginning, which takes a lot of courage, which I can't say is the same for the uncle. The uncle is the least courageous man. He's a fool. A blind fool. So horrible. So there are tie-ins to the other Narnia books, which is fun to see. Also, as I say, I didn't like most of the characters in the first half. The first half, I hated pretty much everyone except for Polly. Because even though Diggory was okay at first, he went downhill really quickly. But there is a reason for all of that, so it's not like I can hold it against them. I hate characters that do things with no reason and are just idiots and dumb. And then the author tries to justify those foolish, horrible things. but in this, there's a reason. But it's just, I did not like the characters that did that. So overall, I did give it a 4.5. I really liked it. But as I say, it's not a book you go into, like, really getting super attached to all the characters and being like, they are my children. Or they are my family. I need to protect and love and adore them for the rest of all time. The second half is a lot nicer on the brain. Let's just say that. Next up, we have what was actually my audiobook pick for the month, and that is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I ended up getting the physical book, as you can see, so obviously I liked it. What is Half a Soul about? Well, we follow Theodora, or more commonly referred to Dora, and she actually as a child had half her soul stolen by this fae bloke who had made a deal with Dora's mother. And he was meant to take all of her, take her whole soul, but only got half of it before he was stabbed by Vanessa, who is Dora's cousin. Now, it's a while later, and due to the loss of half her soul, her emotions are very muted. She doesn't get angry. She doesn't really get sad. She sometimes has an inkling, but it's almost like she doesn't quite react the way people usually do. She's kind of just going through the motions without much emotion. Anyway, so after that, she and Vanessa and her aunt go to the city because it's the debut season, and obviously Vanessa is being introduced, and, you know, to find a husband, because that's what you do in Regency's times. Find husband, get married, live life. Now, while in the city, Dora comes across the Lord Sorcier, Elias. Now, Vanessa actually wants the Lord Sorcier to help Dora to get the other half of her soul back. But Elias is kind of distracted because some children are falling asleep, I guess you would say, and he's trying to figure out why. Because once they fall asleep, they don't eat, they can't do anything, and they end up slowly dying. I adore Dora. She has wit and banter, and despite having most of her emotions gone, she still has an innate kindness. And because she doesn't get hurt over things, people are sometimes like, oh, she's a bit dumb, but she is so cool. She's a perfect main female character because she's not incredibly powerful, but at the same time, she's a bit no fuss. She takes things as they are and isn't constantly snapping all the time, which I hate when they have female characters that just snap like that. Not my kind of vibe, whereas Dora is so far from that. It's so cool. The other side characters, I didn't really get attached to a lot of them. Vanessa, and then Lord, who got injured during the war with Elias, as in not fighting Elias, but as in he and Elias were together during the war, and he's a doctor. So the doctor and Vanessa are pretty cool. Vanessa, she's a bit all over the place, but I like her. The doctor is just, what a lad. And then that brings us to Elias, whose character, I did not enjoy the first interaction they had. And even after that, it took him a little bit to warm on me, because he's very blunt and very judgmental when you first meet him. But he managed to crawl his way back through his actions and through his banter, because he banters with Dora and Dora wins most of the time, in my opinion. Oh, I enjoyed it. Plus, some of the messaging in it is really nuanced, but honest, truthful, and I really enjoyed it. So I ended up giving it a 4.5. I really enjoyed it. Again, the start, there was a section I almost did not finish it. I almost gave it up, but I fought through it and then it was fine after that. I don't know why they had to include that first bit other than to make you absolutely despise Elias. So in their first meeting, Dora and Elias is so crude and treats her like she's really dumb, but in a crude way. And I never understand why authors feel the need to be so ugly. Like, you can have a conflict without getting all sexualized and dumb like that, which I didn't enjoy it. Again, as I said, I almost DNF'd it at that point, just because I was like, why do we need this? Now, I loved how Dora could banter, but not in a slashback, you know, stabby stab kind of banter, just in a calm, collect, matter-of-fact way that sounded so reasonable. So yes, that was Half a Soul, which I actually did the audiobook, but now I have the physical one. Would you believe? Next, we're back in the Chronicles of Narnia, but this time we were in the classic land of the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Such a classic tale. Oh, I have my bookmark in there, which is actually part of an ice cream. The things we make do with for bookmarks. What is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe about? Would you believe it's about a lion, a witch, and a wardrobe? No, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe follows Lucy, Edmund, Sandra? Sandra? Who the hell is Sandra? Susan! Susan and Peter. So Peter, Susan, Lucy, and Edmund. And they have gone to stay with an uncle, would you believe, in the countryside. And while there, it's a big estate. And so the children just sort of explore the estate. They try and keep out of the way of one of the housekeepers who shows through, like, visitors through the house because they open it to visitors. And so they play a lot of hide and seek. But one day, they're playing hide and seek, and Lucy goes to hide in the wardrobe. In this empty room, there's just a big wardrobe. And so Lucy goes into this wardrobe, and as she's sort of scooching back amongst the cloaks, she finds herself in a woods, a snowy woods, and there is a single lamp post just in the middle of this forest. And so she goes out, and through a series of events, she goes back outside. Nothing has changed while she's away. But eventually, one day, some visitors are coming through, and they're like, let's hide from these visitors. And they all scooch back into the wardrobe and close it and go back, and eventually find themselves all together in Narnia. And that's where they stumble across an adventure, including the witch and the lion, would you believe? I was interested to see the differences between the book and the movie. Of course, the movie actually fleshes it out. You know, in most cases, the movie actually cuts out a whole heap of stuff. In this one, they actually had to add some scenes. Now, I did love Lucy and the beavers in this story. The others I never really felt much for, to be honest, but I really did enjoy Lucy and the beavers. And I love how Mrs. Beaver in it she's very motherly. She's like, where's the food? We need some food, we're gonna go travelling, and the rest are like, we just need to go. We just need to go. She's like, we're gonna have some sort of luxury while we're travelling. I'm not gonna just let us starve. And so it's kind of amusing. The plot is rather straightforward. It was good to see good triumph. Oh, spoilers, that's spoilers. There was, again, some biblical parallels, but I noticed less in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe than in The Magician's Nephew. So I rated it a 4.5. Rather straightforward. That's about it. I didn't make many notes for it. It was just a quick read. I pretty much remembered the whole story, so it wasn't like I was sitting there noticing all these new things or anything like that. Next up we have The Ruins of Gorlin, which is part of the Ranger's Apprentice series by John Flanagan. So we start this book following Will, who is an orphan at Castle Redmont. And the orphans at Castle Redmont are put through this system, and when they turn 15, they get chosen or apprenticed out to certain battle schools or chef school or like diplomats and that sort of thing. And Will really wants to get into the battle school because his father, he believes, was a knight, and he wants to be like his dad, who was a hero, according to a little letter that was left with him on the doorstep. That's what Will wants to do, is get into the battle school, but he is small for his age, he's pretty thin, he doesn't have much muscle to him, and so the battle masters look at him and they're like, nah. And so he thinks it's all over. He's like, I'll try and convince them to let me into the school. Instead, Will catches the eye of Holt, who is the ranger of the area. And rangers are said to be a bit mysterious. Nobody really knows what they do. They're fairly quiet. And so there's all these tales about them. But because Will is fast and can sneak around, he's got these natural skills that he's honed, it catches Holt's eye. And so he actually becomes the ranger's apprentice. So while Will is actually training to be a ranger, there are actually whispers about Lord Morgorath, who the rangers have been keeping an eye on after he led a rebellion against the kingdom previously. So we sort of follow Will and Horace, who is his bully slash a new battle school trainee, and then another few group of friends. Alice, Jenny and George are other orphans that have been accepted into different schools as well. Now, I really enjoyed this. I love Will and Holt and all of them in this. And the plot, they don't get too hung up on the training stage. I don't especially love when books have a training stage that lasts forever and they go into each detail. In this book, they have the training stage, but it's glimpses into it and the brief outline. They don't sit there going through training montages for 12 years. And I actually love that because, I'm sorry, I find training paragraphs upon paragraphs to be quite tiring. It's like you're training for the marathon of getting through all that training yourself when you read it. Whereas this, it's well paced, it reads fast, so I love it. So I ended up giving this book a 5-star. And Will and Holt have a really good mentor-apprentice relationship. I really like it. And Holt is very straightforward, but at the same time, while he might grumble a bit when Will is constantly asking questions, I think he appreciates that Will is so inquisitive and wanting to do the right. Now, Baron Arold, he needs more acknowledgement for his jokes. That man is funny, and I think the fact that all his jokes fall so flat to his current audience means he needs to find a new audience because he is hilarious. It's a pretty straightforward, light read. It had me laughing, it had me crying, and it gave me the love of character. I think that's what The Ranger's Apprentice has done best with this book, is the characters are lovable. And I really am a reader that gets attached to characters. So the character growth or the character explanation is really strong, I will attach and adopt really quickly. But if I'm not attaching myself and adopting any of the characters, I like the book less. That's The Ranger's Apprentice by John Flanagan. Woo! Okay, our next book is actually my DNF of the month, which is Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller. This follows Alosa, who is the daughter of the Pirate King, would you believe, who sort of runs the waters of this place. And she is captured by a pirate lord, Draxon. He's recently taken over the title from his father. And then the first mate of that ship is Ridden. And so she gets captured, but it's on purpose. Our girl is so smart. And so she's actually looking for a pirate map that is said to be on Draxon's ship, or a piece of the pirate map to this hidden siren treasure. And so she is on this ship, captured, but also freeing herself to try and find this thing. And she keeps clashing with Ridden, who is sort of put over her to keep an eye on her. And so she's got this whole plan that she's going to steal the map and then get the map to her father at this safe point. And meanwhile, her own crew of her own ship, which is a mainly female crew, is waiting for her to return. And so we just sort of follow her while she's searching for this map. And that is the general rundown on what Daughter of the Pirate King is about. Now, I didn't like the writing style of this book. Alosa spends most of her time telling the reader how cool she is, how she doesn't let her emotions show, how she's really strong, how she's really, like, piratey and savage and ruthless and sneaky. But she never shows any of those traits. And even when she is showing it occasionally, she's like, I am tough. I am so tough, I can get through this. Next minute, she's like, oh, I am so done with this. This is killing me. I am dead. I really like strong female characters, but I hate when the author just tells you how strong they are without backing it up with factual evidence. Because it just makes the main character seem egotistical and like she is a bit brainwashed into thinking she's good when she's really not. Like certain singers on talent shows where they like know my family and everything, love my singing, and they're obviously not that good. Yet they believe wholeheartedly they are. And sometimes it feels like that with certain female characters that are meant to be strong, independent women. So I really didn't like that. And then the whole romance, not romance going on is just a bit cringe. The characters, I didn't like any of them. I think I liked one of the other pirate dudes. That's sort of a side character. He was okay. But again, he's a scummy pirate, so there's only so much you can like about them. Yeah, so I just didn't enjoy it. I have read it through once before, and I can't remember whether I actually enjoyed it or not. Obviously, I finished it. But it wasn't like I was like, this is the greatest book in history back then. And yeah, so I got to the 50% mark and DNF'd it. I was like, I am just hate reading by this point. Because there was just so much going wrong. And I just was enjoying it that little that I was just hate reading it. And I didn't want to be that person. I know some people, they're like, I love feeling the hatred seep into my body as I read and then rant about it. But I felt like that made me a worse person. And so I do like a bit of a rant, but in order to just read a book so I could feel the flames, it seemed a bit wrong somehow. So I did. So next up we actually have The Ghost Horse. By Joe Layden, and this is a non-fiction book, and it's about the story of Tim Snyder, who is a horse trainer. He actually did a lot of different odd jobs around the racetrack during his whole life, and his wife Lisa, and then the horse Lisa's Booby Trap, which Tim trained and then raced in several races in America. It really just follows Tim's journey from being a kid in an abusive home surrounded by alcoholics, and then sort of being around his father, who was also an alcoholic. Just a lot of alcoholism and drug abuse and everything surrounding horse racing and the behind the scenes and horse breeding and just the whole environment and culture of horse racing. I never really know how to rate non-fictions, especially when they are sort of about people's lives. So I gotta sort of go down to the writing style. And while a lot of it was okay, it was just sort of factual rundown of events, there was some inclusions of sort of side characters that I wasn't sure we needed. Randomly followed a jockey at one point to sort of what she did after Tim ended up dropping her as a jockey. And I'm like, well, did we really need that information though? You could have just said that she never rode Tim's horse again, and we would have all been fine with that. This book is kind of sold as a reincarnation story about, you know, Lisa coming back as Lisa's Booby Trap. But at no time did Tim or Lisa's family or whatever say Lisa's Booby Trap was Lisa, or could have been. That was sort of what the media story ran it as. And similarly in this, while they mention it a couple of times that people thought that, none of the family ever thought that. So it's kind of weird that they sold the book in the same way they sold the story back in the media days. I'm like, can't you just, by this point, be a little bit more truthful? But instead the publishers went with that. And I'm like, that's not really what it's all about. Now the tough thing about books like this is Tim Snyder wasn't really what you'd call a good man. It was a business trainer. He didn't get super attached to horses or anything like his wife Lisa did. Honestly, some of his dealings was just a bit probably within his right to do, but not really what you'd call a people person choice. And it said he liked, you know, telling tall stories or long stories that you couldn't really tell if it was real or not, but because of his life, it could be real, but it could also not be real. There's a few discrepancies and things going on, but also Tim was a bit of a storyteller. So I gave it a 3.75, but mainly because I didn't know how to rate it. I'm like, yes, it tells the story, and yes, it gives a background into the hard side of horse racing in America, but it's not what I'd call a super fun or thrilling or impactful read. Unless you're into horses and horse racing and the behind the scenes and that sort of thing, I don't know whether you would like it. It seems a very niche portion of people will like it. I was kind of interested because my grandfather actually trained horses and went to races, and my dad at one point jockeyed and all that sort of things. So I guess in the family there's inklings of it, and so to me it was kind of interesting. A little different because of course it was the Australian horse racing rather than the American. This is American, so it's a bit different. I don't think I really need to give spoilers. So that was The Ghost Horse by Joe Layden. The next book is actually Magic Forged by K.M. Shea, and it is the first book in the Hall of Blood and Mercy series. So in Magic Forged, we follow Hazel, who is a wizard, and she's a rather weak wizard. She can make little sparks of fire. That's about it. And she's meant to actually take over after her parents, their house. So wizards have houses, and the houses are almost sentient and under the sort of rule of the house head. And so she is in line to take over, and she's like, I am really weak, but I'm the only sort of blood heir to this house. So she's really weak. She gets bullied a lot by this other clan, wizard clan, and there's also this other random relative that's distant who is kind of creepy as well. And we unfortunately at the very beginning must face the death of Hazel's parents, and therefore she is thrown into the role as next in line. But she has to go through this ascension before she can take over the house. But before she can do that, there's a bit of a betrayal of the households and by the entire wizarding community, who are like, she is super duper weak. So she tries to, find the wizarding community. She tries to find the werewolf community. No one's helping her out. And finally she heads. It's the last stop on her list because they are known to be fairly bloodthirsty and evil and cruel. And they are the vampires. And of course she goes into this big meeting, and the only vampire family that are willing to bring in this weak wizard into their family is headed by Killian. And so Hazel pledges her allegiance to Killian and his family, and they bring her in to protect her from all the rebelling wizards. Of course, Killian and his family are rumoured to be the worst of the vampires. So she's got a bit going on. She's heartbroken because her parents have died, so she's in mourning. And her house is taken over. Her house is literally falling apart because she didn't ascend. And her distant relative is trying to marry her so he can take over the house. And if that ain't creepy, I don't know what is. And also, during the book, we're following a serial murder. So the vampires, the reason they bring her in, there's a serial murderer on the loose, and they're targeting the vampies. Now, true to her status, our main character, Hazel, isn't very strong. And because of all this stuff going on in her life, which is very understandable, so I don't hold it against her, in fact I understand her, she's a weird mix of avoiding all her problems and then facing certain issues head on. So I think she's just focusing on these small points and just ignoring everything else because that's too much at the moment. And honestly, fair enough, girl. And as for Killian, who is, of course, the head of the vampire family, he is said to be very hot, very handsome, and very just ba-dum-ba-dum. He is a heartthrob villain. So all the villain-loving girlies probably love Killian. Killian, for me, was... Killian has made many mistakes in this book, and Killian is not in the good books. In fact, if Hazel and Killian ever come to me and they're like, actually, we want your approval, it's a no. But it is book one, so anything can happen. But I did enjoy the murder plot going on, serial murders. You get little hints for other plots going on that aren't involved in this serial murder case as well, but to do with her household. So you do get glimpses of that, and I did enjoy that too. Our main girl was a bit, as I just said, avoiding, not paying attention, but I noticed all the clues. I just wish she did, because it would make her life a little easier. As I say, Killian, not in my good books. Hazel, she's fine. Josh the vampire. Now, I don't know, but I really like Josh the emo vampire. Being a vampire, he is pretty much immortal. But at the same time, our lad is obsessed with dying and death. And so he is very emo. And he has a knife collection. Some of the things our buddy Josh says, I'm like, I agree. Josh, vampire buddy, absolutely. I agree. So yeah, some of the other little vampires are kind of cute. But yeah, so it's a good start to the series. So I gave it a 4 stars. Now, I didn't read these two together, but I'm going to do the review together, because they're in the same series. This month I actually read volume 24 and 25 of Yona of the Dawn. Now, if you're a regular on my channel, you know that I adore Yona of the Dawn. I found them through watching the anime, and then I just bought the manga because the anime does not cover it all. It gets you to a certain point and you're like, but where's the rest? So the manga it is, and what a fun time the manga is. So this manga follows Yona, who just turned 16 and is the princess of a land that consists of different tribes. So there's the fire tribe, air tribe, water tribe, and they're sort of ruled over by this one king, who is obviously Yona's father. Anyway, there is a betrayal, and Yona is forced to flee from the castle with her childhood friend slash bodyguard, Huck. And in order to try and help out her kingdom, which she didn't realise was in such a bad state, she goes to search out the 4 dragons. And that's the rough overview of what happens. Now, this series has a lot of political intrigue, a lot of different dark themes going on. Now, this series can follow a lot of really happy comedy moments, a few little romantic moments, but it does cover more serious subjects since there is a war going on and many different ups and downs of these tribes. These two are following Yona as she tries to stop a war between the region to, I believe it's the south, at least on the map it's south, so Sumi. Yona trying to prevent the war between obviously her kingdom and the nation of Xing. She actually has teamed up with one of the princesses of Xing, and meanwhile Huck and the others are also trying to prevent any clashes of the Xing ones with the Wind tribe, and there's a lot of army movements going on in these two books. And in volume, I think it's both, but mainly this one, we come into contact with a cult that wants peace between the two nations, but they're a bit cultish. So, peace through weird means. Let's just put it that way. And of course, I gave these 2 volumes 5 stars. Both of them 5 stars. I just love it. It's cute in places. It's really emotional in places. All the characters are just, you get attached to. And I want to adopt them all. So, but if you know me, Blue Dragon is my lad, and he doesn't appear that much in these. He has little, but he doesn't really feature too much in these, and that's really sad, because if anyone knows me and Blue Dragon, I'm his biggest fan. The biggest Blue Dragon fan you will ever find. On my Yona shelf, I just display ones with Blue Dragon. If the cover has Blue Dragon on it, I am displaying it, or gazing at it lovingly. Next up, we read Jane Eyre, which is about a girl, Jane Eyre, who is left an orphan and is given to her uncle to take care of. The uncle also dies, leaving her with their aunt. And the aunt is not a very nice lady. She thinks that Jane is a liar and a horrible child. And so she sends Jane to this school pretty much to stay and then to live and grow up in that school. So Jane goes to this school where she is trained in all ladylike activities, but she's still a bit of a rebel, and she ends up becoming a governess, and then she moves on to the employment at Thornfield, where Mr. Rochester lives some of the time, but he has a charge who, of course, Jane is put in charge of. And so it's about her life. And I ended up giving it a 4.5. It was a good book. I think I said this in my reading vlog that I didn't love all the characters. It wasn't like I was super attached to anything in this book. But it's a good book. Like, it's an excellent book, but I wasn't sitting there like, a Jane Eyre is my girl, or Mr. Rochester, what a lad. You know, they were just people that I was following, and it was a good, solid plot and musings on life. So it was like almost a 5-star book, but at the same time, I'm not sitting here saying that it's the greatest. Like, it's not a rant about how much I love them kind of book. It's a solid, good book. And the funny thing was, I was reading this version, which is actually abridged, but fortunately I was also listening to the audiobook, and the audiobook is much longer and is obviously not abridged. So I ended up listening to it mostly because, of course, this excludes so much of the actual character and sort of musings of Jane Eyre. And I'm like, but this cuts out all the good bits. Like, you don't get half of the plot with the charge, whatever her name is, the kid. You don't get any of that, why Rochester has her. Like, you have a paragraph probably. Whereas in the audiobook, and obviously the original, it goes on into detail, and you're like, oh, that's what Mr. Rochester is like. It makes so much more sense. In this, Mr. Rochester is kind of just a dude, whereas in the original version, he's actually got some depth. Is he a great man? No. He's a flawed man. Let's not get it twisted. But at the same time, he's got a lot more depth to him than the abridged version gives him. Otherwise, I don't have much to say. I don't think you'll need a spoiler version of this because, as I say, it was a great book, but it's not like I'm sitting here saying, oh, this scene especially, or this thing especially. I was just like, yeah, it's a good book. Anyone who's like, oh, it's a hard book, or like, oh, it's too long. It's a great classic book, but I'm not sitting here like in love with everyone, you know. But yeah, that's Jane Eyre. Pretty straightforward, finally. I mean, I go into enough detail on every other book, so Jane Eyre, good read. I just realised I never credited the authors of the last couple of books. So, Mizuho Kusanagi, butchered the name, wrote and arted beautifully Fiona of the Dawn. So, props to them. And Jane Eyre, of course, was written by Charlotte Bronte. Just so I've credited the authors. Oops. Next up, we have The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Or Maas. Don't know. And this book is actually a collection of 5 novellas for the series Throne of Glass. And those novellas are titled The Assassin and the Pirate King, The Assassin and the Healer, The Assassin in the Desert, The Assassin in the Underworld, and The Assassin and the Empire. So they're all part of this book. 430 pages worth of novella. So what is The Assassin's Blade about? Well, we follow Selena Sardothian, who is the sort of top assassin of Arobrin Hamel, who is the king of the assassins. And she's been raised by Arobin to be a ruthless killing machine, pretty much. But despite being trained by Arobynn and sort of tortured her way into being as strong as she is, she's still got a bit of a rebelliousness to her. The first novella is The Assassin and the Pirate King, in which she is sent by Arobynn to make a deal with the Pirate King. She doesn't know what the deal is, but she is sent along with her nemesis, sparring partner, she doesn't really like, Sam. Then in book 2, The Assassin and the Healer, again, Celaena is sent off by Arobynn, and along the way she has to stop at this tavern, and she comes into contact with Yeren, who is working at the tavern, but she is the daughter of a healer, and that's really what she wants to do, is become a healer. Then book 3, The Assassin in the Desert. The journey she was starting in the previous novella, she is now undertaken and has arrived in the desert, where the Mute Master awaits her, and Arobynn wants her to train under this Mute Master until she gets his tick of approval. So she goes on to some harsh training, meets a few people, and tries to gain the approval of the Mute Master. So in book 4, The Assassin and the Underworld, Celaena is sent to sort of take care of this assassination job and to steal some documents, and she actually pairs up with her nemesis slash friend Sam to get the job done. Then in book 5, again, Celaena and Sam, they've sort of teamed up. They need to do a job because they need money. And so they're like, okay, we can work together on this. But Sam's a little reluctant to let Celaena also help raise this money that they need. And Arobynn is kind of unhappy with them for reasons. I didn't find Celaena to be the most lovable character. I mean, she's an assassin. She's young. I think she's like, I don't know, 17 or something. And as an average 17-year-old protagonist, she's kind of annoying, full of herself. Thinks she is the most strongest person there is in the whole entire world. That she's the sneakiest. She grows on you, but she's not exactly smart. So you're annoyed with her half the time as well. The other characters in this, not gonna lie, hate the Assassin King. Never liked him the whole way through. For reasons. I can't go into detail, but never liked him from the very first sentence I heard about him. I was like, nah, mate. Literally couldn't care less about any of the others. Really, the main person I cared about was Sam, the frenemy. Was he the greatest male character I've ever come across? No. Was he even that endearing? Not really. But compared to all the other characters, was he the best character in this book? Absolutely. 100% recommend the Sammy. Sammy boy is actually literally the best person in this entire book. I don't know what more I can say. Now, let me tell you the ratings as to why I ended up giving it the final score. It's a spoiler reason, and obviously I will tell you spoiler things, but the non-spoilers, you will never know. The Assassin the Pirate, I gave a 4.5. The Assassin the Healer, I gave it a 4.5. The Assassin in the Desert, I gave it a 4. The Assassin in the Underworld, I gave a 3.5. And The Assassin in the Empire, I gave it a 3. That's being nice, okay? And my overall rating ended up a 3.5. And you may be saying, averaging that out doesn't make sense for that to be a 3.5. It deserves a 3.5, okay? Finally, let's just end And all of this, it's taken me days to film this because chronic fatigue, big killer. And I'm just gonna get in and finish this the book. And last of all, one of the greatest books I read this month, and that is A Stepmother's Mansion, Volume 2. What a relief to end on this piece of art. This incredible portrayal of beloved characters, of smart decisions, and of cool visuals. As always, with this series, the artwork is amazing. They've got muted tones for certain emotional scenes, and then brighter colours for more cheery or funny scenes. I hadn't noticed before, but I noticed this read through that where they go back to the past, because they have flashbacks in this one, they have little black pages. Like, the pages are actually black where it's in the past. And that's so helpful, because sometimes you're like, wait, where are we now? Are we in the future? Are we in the past? Where are we? So that's really helpful, actually. And so what is A Stepmother's Mansion about? It is about Marchioness Shuri von Neuschwanstein. And so she marries a Martian, obviously, and she is still very young. But the Martian already has 4 children to his first wife. And so she is almost raised by her husband in order to take over the family, raise his kids, and make sure the household continues running after he passes away. It's actually a time travel manhwa. So Shuri from the future of one timeline she's lived through, she feels like her children all hate her. Her eldest is getting married, and his to-be wife comes and says, yeah, he doesn't really want you at the wedding. You've done enough. He'll take over the house from now. And she's like, okay. And so she actually gets in a carriage accident and ends up time traveling to the past. So she's there, she wakes up, and it's the day of her husband's funeral. And she's like, wow, okay, there's a few things I could change this time around. So it's sort of her making new decisions. Now that she has better knowledge, she's trying to make sure the family is better situated than when she was kind of still a little unsure of herself. And because she's got this little bit more confidence, she still has trauma from her past and from her future self. So she's also struggling with that. But also, because she approaches things different, the children actually start to see her in a different light. And she actually accepts that in this timeline. And it's just fun to read. Because they don't really have a start and end, it's sort of a volume just going through the one story. It's hard to review each volume or give a rundown of what each one is because it spoils the previous ones. As I say, I love the art, I love the characters, and we get to know more about Nora and then the Crown Prince as well. All the random family dynamics going on. And of course Nora's backstory, and then you have the Crown Prince's backstory, then you've got that creepy churchman who is just shiver up spine kind of creepy. He's just like, ooh. And he also, you know, uses the Bible incorrectly, just saying. I don't know what they're basing off his character, whether it's like a Roman Catholic Church or something like that. But either way, he tries to use his teachings to oppress people. So evil churches aren't an unusual subject for time travel and reincarnation and isekai stories. It's quite an easy target to turn evil. Usually they're doing the play incorrectly, which, you know, happens in real life too. So good fun. Love the art. Love the characters. 5 stars. Excellent. I've actually got the third one up there. You can just see it. Dude. And the 4th one comes out at the end of this month, which I'm gonna get, of course. It's just so good, especially if you don't want to use too much brain power. It tells the story through pictures and great dialogue and scenes. So it's got a depth of story, but it gives you pictures, so it's easy. You're like a kid, but it's got pictures. It's got pictures. Anyway, love this book. I also technically reread volume 1 when I read volume 2 as well, which of course was great as well. Just look how pretty the book is though. It's like a prized possession by this point. Love it. And that concludes my July wrap up. It was quite a journey. It's going to be the longest wrap up in history. I don't apologise, it's great fun. After days and days and days of filming, we finally reached the end. Let me know whether you've read any of these books, what you rated them, and whether I've inspired you to read any of them. And I shall see you all in the next video. Peace!
티니로그 끝.